Welcome to Let's Learn, the show where we sit down and try to learn decks from scratch without knowing them. I'm Hardleg Joe, if you didn't know, and today we're learning Goblin Bikers. The new deck that's on Master Duel, it's like a rank 3 Ixie deck. There's new support coming out, which will probably have its name changed in the TCG. And we're going to try to learn all of that before it comes out so that we're prepared for it to be meta dominant, possibly? I actually have no idea how strong this deck is. I hear mixed things about it. But we're gonna learn together. If you're unfamiliar with this show, it's a blind deck building show, which means I'm just gonna sit down here without any resources and read the cards and see if I can figure out how to make them work based just on reading the cards and I guess my own Yu-Gi-Oh experience. As a result, we will not be making the best Goblin Biker deck, or even necessarily a good Goblin Biker deck, but we should have a good idea of what the cards can do, how the deck functions in general, and if you're new to Yu-Gi-Oh! Or new to deck building, this should give you an idea of, like, how you can do this. Because I see a lot of people who are like, I don't know how to build a deck without looking at other people's decks. You can do it. The game gives you the tools to build the deck in the game. It's pretty neat. So we're gonna try that. Before we jump into it though, I want to give a special shout out to this episode's sponsor, Cat Monarch, who is a patron who requested this episode. Thanks, Cat Monarch. It's only because of people like them that I don't have to take actual like corporate sponsors or whatever. I can just take the patrons and do a good job. And you know, if you enjoy that, if you want to join the Patreon yourself, maybe request a future Let's Learn, there's a link down in the description, patreon.com/hardleggaming. Otherwise, let's go ahead and bike into it. Bike is a verb, don't tell me otherwise. Alright, so the first thing you do whenever learning a new deck is to look at the field spell, but there is no field spell. So instead, we look at the boss monsters, which are most likely going to be the Ixie monsters. I'm going to assume they're down here. And I have no idea which ones are best, but I know that this one is the newest one. It's still in the OCG, and it has a kick-ass name. It also has a really high rank, so I'm going to assume that this is probably the best. If not, maybe this one, and then we'll look at the other two. But we'll start with Kick-Ass Goblin Bikers, name pending. This is a dark rank 6 fiend with 2500 attack, 2000 defense, and it takes 2+ level 6 monsters. You can target face-up monsters your opponent controls up to the number of goblins you control, detach one material from a monster you control, and if you do, attach the targeted monsters to this card as material. Then, during your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can target cards your opponent controls up to the number of Goblin Ixie monsters you control, detach 3 materials from monsters you control, and if you do, send the targeted cards to the graveyard. You can use each effect once per turn. Alright, so we've got quite a bit of removal. During your turn, you can target monsters and attach them. During your opponent's turn, you can target cards and send them to the graveyard. Both of these are activated by detaching material from any kind of Ixie. Is it any kind of Ixie you control? Yeah, it's monsters you control. So I'm going to assume, if I didn't already know, that this is going to be an Ixie spam archetype, but also that especially you'll want to leave a bunch of Ixies on the field with material. You probably won't be like linking them off or using them for other things. They're probably going to be used that way. Pretty good. I'm not sure if it's necessarily a win condition, but I mean, I guess it is up to 3 cards, right? No, I guess it's up to 6, because it's up to the number of Goblin Ixies you control, which, I mean, getting 6 would be difficult. Most likely you're looking at 2, maybe 3, but that's still pretty good removal. You know, not quite mass removal, but multiple removals. All right, let's check out this other level 6, which actually I only know because of chat. I'm recording this live on Twitch, and I originally looked up Goblin Biker, added all the cards, and they're like, what about Goblin's Crazy Beast? For some reason, this doesn't include Biker, which makes it kind of difficult to learn on your own, although I suspect that if you were on Master Duel and you looked at related cards, this would probably be included. So Goblin's Crazy Beast is another rank 6 Dark Fiend monster with 2700 attack, also takes 2+ level 6 monsters, and has the following effect. Once per turn, quick effect, you can target one spell trap on the field, detach 2 materials from monsters on the field, and if you do, attach that target to this card as material. If a monsters you control would be destroyed by card effects, you can detach 1 material from this card instead. If this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon it, then attach 1 goblin from your graveyard as material. You can only use this effect once per duel. Ah, the rare once per duel effect. So it does come back at least once. That's kind of nice. Spell trap removal, pretty good, although you gotta detach 2 materials. Although unlike the other one, this is from either monster on the field, so, you know, if you got that Goblin Biker mirror match, this could be really good. Or isn't there like a rank 4 Ixie deck that's coming out in the TCG? Maybe this helps with that. And then it also has the Dingirsu effect. If any monsters would be destroyed, you can detach 1 instead. Pretty good. Again, not really a win condition, but certainly a decent card if you can summon it. Looking at the monsters briefly, it looks like they're all level 3 except for 1/6, but I assume there's some way to like double the levels or add 3 levels or something like that. Mostly though, it seems like we're going to be making the level 3s, and I guess there's no better time than the present to read their most well-known monster, Goblin Biker Big Gabonga. Ironically, not very big, only 2100 attack, 0 defense. This is a light beast warrior instead of a dark fiend, which is interesting. And it just takes 2 level 3 monsters. You can't stack more than 2 like the other ones. If this card is Ixie summoned, you can add 1 goblin monster from your deck to your hand. If material is detached from a monster on the field, except during the damage step, target 1 face-up monster on the field, except this card, attach it to this card as material. During the end phase, you can attach 1 goblin monster from your deck to this card as material. You can only use each effect once per turn. Alright, interesting. I mean, attaching something as material is pretty good removal. There's a lot of cards that can't be destroyed. There's not a lot that say, like, this can't become Ixie material. It does still target, and it does require you to have another monster with material. Or I guess if you have this and maybe one of the spell traps, like, detaches from this, that would trigger its effect and you could equip something. So again, pretty good removal, could potentially be used as disruption if you have a way to trigger it during the opponent's turn, and it just sort of refills itself. It doesn't have anything to do when it actually detaches though. So I guess you just keep the materials, and I assume there's going to be something else like the rank 6s that's going to use the material since this one does it. Also worth noting, this adds any goblin monster from your deck to your hand. If you don't know, Goblin is a name that's been used... I dropped my cookies. Goblin is a name that has been used across Yu-Gi-Oh's history with a bunch of cards that aren't really themed around anything. We got zombies, we got normal monsters, we've got like weird burn cards, fiend support, Goblinberg is like a rank 4 extenders, Scrap Goblin is an entirely different archetype. So potentially we could search all of these. I don't know if any of them are worth searching. I mean, this seems like a newer card. I guess we'll go ahead and add that in there and just read it. I don't think the rest of them are worth consideration. I don't think you're going to build a Memento Goblin Biker deck, but, you know, you never know. It gives you some options. Maybe they'll release future goblins that synergize with these goblins. But anyway, let's go back to the archetype in question and look at their last Ixie, Goblin Biker Troika Grere, which is difficult to say. This is a light warrior, so I guess there's no typing between them. Seems like we got a whole bunch of different stuff. 1700 attack, rank 3, and this one is 2+ level 3 monsters, so you can potentially stack a whole bunch of them on there. It states, while 3 or more Ixie materials are attached to monsters on the field, goblins you control can attack directly. Once per turn, if a monster is normal or special summoned, while this card is in the monster zone, except during the damage step, You can target one of those monsters, detach a material from a monster on either field, and if you do, change the targeted monster's battle position. Once per turn, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can detach one material from a monster on either field, and if you do, negate the attack. Okay, so this is really going in hard on, like, this helps counter other Ixie decks by using the other material. Granted, what it uses that material for is not great. I mean, changing something's battle position and negating attack are not, like, optimal, but it's probably worth making this on top of everything else, because, I mean, you know, you can only use this once per turn anyway. If you have more material, maybe you could get something else like a, what's it called? There's like that rank 3 bug that negates stuff that's generic, but there's not a whole lot of, like, rank 3s that offer interruption. And this could potentially save you, you know, moving something into defense mode is occasionally useful, negating an attack is occasionally useful. And this also kind of acts as a win condition in a way, because being able to make everything attack directly is a great way to go for game, even if you can't clear everything off. Granted, all of these effects so far are all about clearing monsters off the field, so maybe that'll be useless. Maybe it's one of those things where it's like, the rest of the deck is field nukes, so attacking directly doesn't mean anything. But at the moment, I'd say, like, yeah, you probably want this as at least a one of. I'd probably say, from the sounds of it, that you want 2 big Gabonga, one to make in case the other one gets removed. And kick-ass Goblin Bikers, maybe a 2 of as well. It really depends on how easy it is to summon. It might be a case where, like, you only have one because you're rarely going to make that one. And this seems like a tech card, this seems like a tech card, at least for now. We'll find out more as we go into the Monsterverse. And I guess they're all the same rank, they're all roughly the same attack, so we might as well just go down the line and start with the one odd man out, Goblin Bikers Gone Wild. The Soul level 6, which is also a Fiend, Dark, 2400 attack in its own right, which is like one of the stronger cards in here, and the following effect. If you control no monsters, or all monsters you control are goblin monsters, you can normal summon this without tributing. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If this card is normal or special summon a level 4 or lower goblin from your deck. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you could target one card on the field, attach it to a goblin Ixie you control. So if you've got no cards or only goblins, you can just normal summon this, which, not great unless the goblins, like, all special summon themselves. I feel like you'd need to use a normal to get them on the field in the first place. But maybe this is on, like, a follow-up turn, maybe this is a turn 2 play. Although its effect activates if it's normal or special, so maybe there are effects that let you special summon this. It gets you a card from the deck, which is really good, but as we already pointed out, this is the only level 6, they have no links, so what you can do with that other monster is really going to depend on what we can summon, and if it does anything on summon. And then that effect of when it goes to the graveyard. If this card is sent from the graveyard. Notably, it doesn't have to be sent from the field to the graveyard, from anywhere. So I believe that'll still trigger, even if it's used as Ixie material and you detach it and it goes to the graveyard. It also works if, like, you discard it or send it from the deck to the graveyard. I don't know if that makes it worth, like, playing a Foolish Burial just to send this so you can attach something your opponent controls. That would be some neat niche removal. But it's definitely got some potential. I'm going to leave it at 1 for now, and we're going to put 2 into the side deck, and if it turns out there's an easy way to special summon this, or something that we can, like, get from the deck makes this into a level 3, or makes something else into a level 6, then this will probably be a 3 of. Okay, going down the line, we're going to start with the one that has the most attack, which is Goblin Biker Doug Charger. He was tired of being kicked around by Roger Klotz. Now he's decided to tame a boar. It's a comment in the comments if you get that joke. Anyway, this is an Earth Warrior, level 3, 1600 attack, 0 defense. And if this card is in your hand, you can detach one material from a monster on either field, and if you do, special summon this card. If this card is normal or special summoned, add one Goblin Biker spell trap from your deck to your hand. You can only use each effect once per turn. Alright, so again, kind of leaning into the fact that this counters other Ixie decks, it can detach from either side of the field to summon itself. Now that is an effect that activates, so if they have something like Cyber Dragon Infinity, they can just negate this and then you don't get the summon and it gets destroyed. But even if you just want to normal summon it, or if you have some other way to make an Ixie, it does search any Goblin Biker spell trap. And while we haven't read any of the spell traps yet, I'm going to assume that any card that searches like 5 other cards is probably going to be a 3 of. It's probably going to be a starter. Might even be something that you instantly want to get off of Goblin Bikers Gone Wild. I mean, just already opening up with this now, it seems like, okay, now this becomes a +2, you know? If you open with this and nothing else, you normal summon it, it gets you Doug Charger out of the deck. Doug Charger gets you any spell trap, and if any spell trap does something, well, bam, Bob's your uncle. So we've got, like, the potential for a 1-card combo. We'll have to read the rest of these to be sure, but I'm going to tentatively put these at 3 with the assumption that one of these is going to be pretty darn good. Next up on the list, we have Goblin Biker Clattersploder. We got a Fire Beast Warrior this time, 1500 attack, 0 defense, and if this card is normal or special summoned, target 1 goblin in your graveyard and special summon it. During your opponent's main phase, if this card is in your graveyard, quick effect, you can detach 1 Ixie material from a monster on the field, and if you do, special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. Interesting. So, this feels like it's missing something. This feels like half of an equation. You know, it's got this quick effect to summon itself during the opponent's turn by detaching, and if it's summoned, you could target a goblin in your graveyard, special summon it. So far, we don't have anything that really does a whole lot when it's special summoned. These got effects when something was it attached or detached? If a material is detached from a monster on the field. Ah, okay, now I get it. So if this is in the graveyard, it can trigger Big Gabonga. Granted, it's like a recovery card. I'm not sure if it's worth playing more than 1. Maybe you have some way to like grab this and just put it in the graveyard. It does open up the possibility that maybe you do want to play Foolish Burial, because now you've got multiple targets for it. And it does give you some follow-up. I think it's worth playing at least 1, maybe more. But again, we'll have to see how everything else synergizes with this deck. You'll find yourself saying, this feels like half the equation a lot with this deck. Oh boy. Moving on down the line, we've got Goblin Biker Boommock. This time it's a Wind Warrior, 1300 attack. They keep getting weaker. And also, I can't help but notice that none of these are actually bikes. They're riding animals. I'm not sure if you could call them bikers if they're on animals. I think they should be like goblin riders, right? Maybe it's just me. Either way, once per chain during the main phase, if this card is in your hand or graveyard, quick effect, detach 1 material from a monster on either field, and if you do, special summon this card. Also, you cannot special summon Goblin Biker Boommock until the end of the turn. Alright. For a second there, I was about to be like, whoa, a once per chain, not a once per turn? That is insane. But it's effectively once per turn, because you can only summon 1 until the end of your next turn. Ooh. Yeah, like at the very beginning of this, I was like, ooh, here's a nice 3 of. This is something that can be really useful at any point, just summoning it, being able to detach. But limiting you until the next turn, that's kind of brutal. And it's also not really good. I guess it is good in the graveyard. So this seems like another one of those things that, like, you know, if you have some way to put it in the graveyard, or like you make an Ixie with it first turn, maybe you've already got Doug Charger, and then you find a way to get this, and then like you summon a Boommock. You just put it in the graveyard. You could do it next, or you can't do it next turn because it'll only be special summoned once per turn, once per 2 turns essentially. Yeah, ooh, that's definitely a 1 of. I'm not even gonna be like, maybe there should be 2. Oh wait, so it is only locked into that effect. So if you special summon it with some other effect, you can still use its effect. Okay, so it's not as bad as I thought. It's still not great. So we will see. Okay, we got 1 more monster. Let's see if this really like ramps things up. This is Goblin Biker, Mean Merciless. Got a water monster. Does that mean they've got like every attribute? Water, wind, fire, earth, dark. We just need a light. This isn't the light. One more light monster. Its effect is, if this card is normal or special summoned, you can summon a goblin monster from your hand, except another copy of itself. During your main phase, if this is in your graveyard, you can detach material from a monster on either field, and if you do, special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use each effect of Mean Merciless once per turn. So, this is one of those cards that, like, a year ago, I would be, like, absolutely a 3 of, because it turns this plus any other Goblin Biker into, like, a one-card combo. No matter what other goblin you have in your hand, you are going to be able to make at least Big Gabonga get a search. If you have Gone Wild, then like, Gone Wild searches Doug, Doug gets you a spell, Ixie summon these two, get something else on the field. But in the modern age where you really want one-card combos, this is something where it's like, normal summon Mean Merciless, activate the effect, your opponent activates Imperm, or Valor. Well, I guess I'll just pass my turn on Merciless then. It's not quite a tour guide. If it's summoned from the deck, it might be worth that. Or if any of these had like, if this was like, if you control a goblin, you could special summon it, that would be like a completely different thing. But it feels like you're going to need some other engine in this deck to try to bait out spells and traps so that you can actually resolve stuff like Mean Merciless. I think for now, since the Let's Learn versions of decks tend to be more pure, I'm going to go ahead and put this at 2, or 3. I'm going to go ahead and put this in here. We're going to max out on Goblin Bikers. As I said at the beginning, probably not the best way to play Goblin Bikers. I'm sure you can mix them with other stuff. But for a first attempt at the deck where we're just trying to learn the mechanics, sticking with pure, this is probably good in a pure build where you're playing a whole lot of Goblin Bikers. Speaking of which, we do have one other Goblin card. I guess we should go ahead and read this. It's not the right level, and so far nothing modulates levels, but maybe this will? Ooh. So, Goblin Freefall Squad. This is a Wind Warrior, 0 attack, 2000 defense, so if nothing else, you could set it. Also, I just want to point out, this guy, he's got a vibe. He's like, come at me, bro. I am 3 helicopters. You cannot compete. I mean, that's one way to freefall. I guess you don't have to worry about the parachutes or whatever. Anyway, if this card is special summoned from the hand in attack position, you could target one face-up effect monster your opponent controls, change this card to defense position, and negate the effects of that monster while this monster is in defense position. If a monster is special summoned to your opponent's field while this card is in your graveyard, you can discard one card, add this card to your hand. You can only use each effect once per turn. Okay, I mean, you can summon this out of the hand with Mean Merciless, but, you know, negating something's effects while this is in defense position, not very good, not the right levels, doesn't have good attack. we're just gonna forget that ever existed. Okay, and that just leaves us with these spell traps. And I guess we're just going to go down the lines. We're going to start with the spells, and the normal spell in particular. Goblin Biker Grand Entrance. Add a goblin monster from your deck to your hand. I don't need to read the rest. We have a 3 of. There is a Rhoda, ladies and gentlemen. Anytime you find a Rhoda, unless the rest of the card is like, and then for the rest of the turn, you can't activate cards and you lose the duel at the end of the turn, you're gonna want this. Okay, what else does it do in addition to searching every card in the archetype? Detach one Ixie material from a monster on either field, and if you do, special summon a level 4 lower goblin from your hand. You can banish this card from your graveyard, detach one material from a monster on either field, add a goblin from your graveyard to your hand. You can only use each effect once per turn. That's pretty darn good. It does everything. It summons out of the hand as extension, it searches, it gives you, if nothing else, this is one hell of a way to bait out Ash. And then when it's in the graveyard, it lets you get back, and it's each effect once per turn, so you can add back the same turn that you do this. just great, just great. And the, like, detaching Ixie is a then you can, which means, like, even if you don't have any Ixies, you don't have to do it. Okay, next up we got a quick play spell, Goblin Biker Grand Breakout. Okay, so all the spells are grand. Tribute one monster, already. You gotta tribute a monster? That's a pretty steep price. This better do a lot. Special summon one goblin monster from the deck, but it cannot attack this turn. Alright, that might be worth it. When a monster declares an attack, you can banish this card from your graveyard and detach any number of materials from Goblin Ixie monsters you control. All monsters your opponent currently controls lose 1,000 attack for each material detached until the end of this turn. You can only use each effect once per turn. Alright. Interesting. It is generic. It is tribute any one monster. So potentially, like, if you have the Goblin Bikers gone wild and you don't want to be stuck with a level 6, you could tribute that off, get like a level 3, put maybe like a Clatter Sploder or a Boom Mock into the graveyard to help you out. It seems potentially good, but I don't think it's good enough that you want to play it at 3 because it's not a starter. It kind of assumes you already have some stuff. Although, at the same time, wait a second, this is a quick effect. So, if you do something like normal summon Mean Merciless, and they try to hit it with Imperm, you can be like, psych, and dodge that out of the way because it tributes for cost, get a different Goblin Biker from the deck, still resolve the special summon from the hand, and now you've got some battle protection. That's a tricky one. This is one of those cards, it reminds me of Book of Eclipse in Ritual Beast, if you watch the Ritual Beast ladder climb. That's one of those cards, doesn't start anything, doesn't really help you all that much going first, but if you have combos, this helps insulate them. And again, because we're playing a pure Goblin Biker deck, I think I'm going to try this at 3. It's probably too much. You probably want to play this as like a 1 of, maybe even a 0 of, but for now I'm going to try that out and see if it works. And because it can tribute anything, I don't know, I think I'm going to put another Clatter Sploder in here, because this makes this slightly better. It does also trigger the Goblin Bikers, but you need to have an Ixie already. You know, this is something, normally I save the tech cards for later, but right now I'm going to go ahead and say that you probably want to play the Terror Top engine in this deck. If you're unfamiliar with this is an old rank 3 engine, just if you control no monsters, special summon this from your hand. When this is normal or special summoned, add a Speedroid monster from your deck to your hand, except another copy of itself. And you're almost always going to add Takatomborg, which is another level 3, that just says, if you control a wind monster, special summon this from your hand. And I mean, we do have more than one wind monster, we have 2 of them even. So, if nothing else, this is like something that baits out Ash, something that baits out like any kind of disruption, really, because it searches on summon. It gets you a free level 3, so you could normal summon any other level 3, make an Ixie, then use some of the effects to like special summon some stuff. It gives you a free monster to tribute for Breakout. Just any kind of free level 3 you can put on, I think is going to be pretty good. Alright, going back to our spells, we've got one more, a continuous spell, called Goblin Biker Grand Bash. This says goblin monsters gain 300 attack for every goblin you control, and during your main phase, you can normal summon one goblin in addition to your normal summon or set. You can only gain this effect once per turn. You could target 2 goblins you control, then activate one of these effects. Make the level of one become the level of the other, or both their levels become their combined levels. Alright, that's pretty good. So we finally got some level modulation, and it does both of the things I could have asked for. If you've already got Gone Wild, it can turn it into a level 3, it can turn any of your level 3s into a level 6, or if you don't have this, but you still want to get into your rank 6s, you could get any 2 level 3s and combine them into a 6. This also seems like something that is absolutely going to be a one of. You really don't want to play more than one of these because they can brick really heavily. They aren't it isn't an extender unless you've already got 2 monsters. This seems like something where you want to get to Doug, and Doug is going to search this like 90% of the time, unless you don't have any other goblins in hand. Then you want to go for like Grand Entrance or maybe even Breakout. It's possible I'm wrong, especially if we get like more goblins, or if I end up putting Boom Mock at 3, maybe we'd want to do this. But I think for now, 1 is fine. I'll go ahead and put 2 in the side deck, just in casesies. Oh, and as someone is pointing out, a side effect of this, even though it clearly can make 3s and 6s, is you could potentially make rank 9s as well. So, you know, Phantom Fortress and Blafnir, watch out! That is a non-targeting banish, so it's probably worth playing. Depends what the rest of the extra deck looks like. And that is going to depend on these final 3 traps. Starting with the normal trap, Goblin Biker Grand Pile-Up. Alright, this says, target 1 Ixie monster you control. Special summon a Goblin Ixie from your extra deck by using that target as material. And if you do, attach this card to it as material as well. You can banish this card from your graveyard, target 1 Goblin Ixie you control, and 1 card in either graveyard. Attach the targeted card from the graveyard to the monster on the field as material. Only use each effect once per turn. I mean, it lets you dodge stuff. It lets you turn your 3s into your 6s. So if Troika's already done something, or Big Gabonga's already done something, you can turn it into this. I'm not sure if that's worth it, especially when you've only got one thing that searches it so far, and you probably want to use it to get your extenders, but it might be worth playing a one-of. It really depends what these other 2 traps do. And next up, we've got Goblin Biker Grand Crisis, a continuous trap card that says, you can target 1 goblin monster you control and 1 monster your opponent controls, or target 1 goblin in your graveyard and 1 monster in your opponent's graveyard. Banish both monsters. You can send this card from the spell trap zone to the graveyard. Target 5 banished goblin monsters with different names. Special summon them. You can only use 1 Goblin Biker Grand Crisis effect per turn and only once per turn. Interesting. So it's kind of like an Icarus attack, except it's not a 2-for-1. It's 1 you control and 1 your opponent controls, and it banishes them. It is continuous, so you can just keep using that every turn. Your goblins don't benefit from being banished. They don't really want to be banished. I think there's one that like banishes itself when it leaves the field, so you may be able to get more. And you have to have exactly 5. If you have exactly 5, then you can special summon them. So it's like the best comeback card in history if you manage to proc it 5 times and you have a completely clear field. But it does seem kind of like a win more card. It does seem a little cheesy. Maybe in formats where like you're really hurting for like banishing removal. But I feel like this deck is already like 4 different things that remove monsters. I'm not sure you need even more removal. I'm going to put this on the side for now. Maybe we'll change it. Maybe chat can convince me to play it. But for now, I'm just going to go on to their other continuous trap. Goblin Biker Grand Stampede. During your main phase, you can, immediately after this effect resolves, Ixie summon 1 Ixie monster using only goblins you control. If you control a Goblin Ixie monster, you can target 1 effect monster on the field, detach 1 material from a monster on either field, and if you do, negate that monster's effects until the end of this turn. You can only use each Goblin Biker Grand Stampede effect once per turn, and only once that turn. Alright, so this one I look a little bit more favorably on. It's not removal, but it's negation, which the deck has lacked up until this point. It does require you to detach a monster, but that also triggers the Big Gabonga, so you kind of want to do that. Negates until the end of this turn, and I mean, if you don't want to do that, but you have like 2 cards and you really want to switch something's battle position, or I don't know how you would make the level 6 during the opponent's turn. Maybe you could. This does change their levels permanently, so if you planned it ahead of time, you could like make 2 monsters level 6 and then set this and have the potential to go into one of these during your opponent's turn. But that seems like a lot of work for not a whole lot of payoff, but you could do it, and I think that's going to make it worth playing a one of. I'll be interested to see afterwards when I look up Goblin Bikers list if everyone's like, oh, this one's dumb. What you need to play is Grand Crisis. But we will see. And with that, we've covered all the Goblin Biker cards. From here, it's just up to the tech cards. And you know, since we're playing on Master Duel, we gotta pay the Master Duel tax. 3 Max C, 3 Ash Blossom. This is supposedly going to be a competitive or at least a rogue deck. So I'm gonna stick with the old standby. Where's Called By? Because this does seem like something that you probably also are susceptible to Max C. I mean, you're making Ixies, so any combo that you have is inherently going to be like at least 2 cards off of Max C, so you probably want to stop that as much as possible. Alright, and from there we're left with 6 tech slots that we could fill in with pretty much anything. And I think if I were playing this to go into Master, I'd probably just put like hand traps, board breakers, generic staples, you know, Imperm, triple tactics talents, maybe Nibiru or Valor, depending on the format. But for the sake of making this a little interesting and kind of showing off what this deck can do, I think it'd be better to just play more extenders. Just try to play through the hand traps and set up a big board with a whole bunch of stuff. Just make as many rank 3s as possible. And if you want to do that, oh boy, are there different engines that you can use. You know, Tour Guide, Classic, just summons a level 3 Fiend from the deck. I'm pretty sure we have level 3 Fiend somewhere. Yeah, Mean Merciless. Its effects will be negated. Psychic Wielder and Psychic Tracker are both, if you control a level 3 monster, you can summon them. Kagemusha Knight says when you normal summon a level 3, special summon this from your hand. But I think the one that I'm going to go for is Emergency Teleport and Ghost Ogre, because this serves sort of like a dual purpose. If you don't know Ghost Ogre, it's one of the lesser used hand traps. It basically says if your opponent activates the effect of a card that's already face up on the field, like a monster or a continuous spell, you can discard this and destroy that card. It doesn't negate, but if you use it on, say, like a field spell, like Sangan Summoning, it essentially negates it because those have to remain face up in order to resolve. So we've got a hand trap, but also it's a level 3 Psychic, which means we can use Emergency Teleport. Special summon a level 3 Psychic from your hand or deck, but banish it during the end phase. So it's a free level 3, and also you could potentially, this is one of the few hand traps, its effect can be used from the field as well. So if you don't need the extension, you can set E-Tele, and then use it on your opponent's turn to summon this, and then if they try to do something, you can blow them up by like sending this from the field to the graveyard. It's very neat. And that leaves us with 1 card left, which I'm going to use on Foolish Burial, like I suggested earlier. You know, I think this has some potential. I think it can not necessarily start a bunch of plays, but work as extension, work as giving us more ability to interact with our opponent, or even used as removal on follow-up turns if you send like Goblin Bikers Gone Wild. And that gives us a solid 40 card deck. From there, it's just a matter of what we can get in the extra deck. And one thing I know already, without even having to look anything up, is that we probably want to play Zeus. In fact, I think Zeus is at 2 in Master Duel now. We probably want to play 2 Zeus. This is like all Ixies all the time. Why wouldn't you want to play that? Other than that, I'm going to sit down, look over all the rank 3 monsters that exist, and maybe some of the rank 6s, see what they have, see if there's anything else worth playing. I can think of a couple candidates, and we'll throw some stuff in there. Wakow! There we go, a full extra deck with a whole bunch of stuff to spare. In the end, I decided to mostly go for like every rank 3 that actually does something. We've got some spell trap removal, we've got some monster negates, we've got some bigger monster negates, but it takes 3 monsters, but also like it can attack a lot. We've got Bamboozling Gossip Shadow, which is actually an interesting way to like negate stuff like Nibiru. It's if your opponent activates a monster effect, you can detach 2 materials and the effect becomes both player draw 1 card. Funny. It can also like stack stuff on other things. It's a bamboozler, I tell you what. We've got Fortune Tune, which is a way, it's like a monster that can like attack and not be destroyed by battle, which lets you make Zeus more easily. We've got one other rank 6 in the form of a Valzar Lars, which is technically an Omni-Negate. It works kind of like Red Hot Dragon Archfiend. And we've got one rank 9 that we'll probably never make, but I mean, anytime I can make Infinitrack Earthfucker, I might as well throw it in here. It's also worth noting there's a whole bunch of other stuff you can make that I'm not playing. Totem Bird is a spell trap negate, but requires specifically wind monsters, which I mean, we do have some, but we're only playing one Boom Mock. Maybe if we played more, I would do that. Spaceway Octo Bypass. Someone in chat pointed out that this is an anti-Tenpai tech, and yeah, it certainly is. You know, if it survives until the battle phase, you can activate this effect, and it basically just skips their turn. And you can also use the trap to make this with 2 level 3 goblins. I don't think that seems very realistic. Most likely they're going to have some way to deal with your cards before then. But if you're playing in like gold or platinum or whatever against the Tenpai Menace, this can be very funny. And also the Armored Ixie package, which honestly probably should be in here, but I've already got a complicated deck that I'm learning for the first time. I don't want to put a whole nother engine in here that takes up 3 extra deck spaces and gives us a main deck Garnet in order to facilitate that. But anyway, all the potential tech cards aside, we've got the deck, we've got what we wanted. And now the next thing is to test it out. Over here on yugioh Omega, which is what I'm actually using, they have this nifty test hand feature, which I wish they would implement in Master Duel, where you could just load up, draw yourself 5 cards, and play against a bot that essentially just has a bunch of like normal monsters and spell traps that don't do anything, so you can test out all your combos and plays. Over on Master Duel, you kind of have to load up against the AI, which takes a little bit longer, and depending on which AI you play against, they might actually be able to stop you or whatever. And I also don't like change it so you can stack your hand and play comp. Like this way I can specifically pick if I want to open with like 1 card or 2 card or 2 specific cards to try to figure out combos just with those. But you can still do something kind of like this on Master Duel. But all that aside, I'm going to be loading up in the test hand feature. I'm going to be testing this out. I'm going to see if I can figure out 1 or 2 1-card combos, and then I'll come back and show you the combos I figured out. We'll be like, ooh, neat, this is what Goblin Bikers do. Alright, so after messing around with Goblin Bikers off camera, I have come up with 2 1-card combos, both using this new Goblin Bikers Gone Wild card. Not out in Master Duel yet, but when it does come out, oh boy, the combos. And there's a bunch of ways to search this too, so you got a lot of access to this. We're going to normal summon it, use its effect, summon any from the deck, and you're almost always going to go for Doug unless you already have Doug, because he's like the only one that does something when he's summoned. He searches a spell trap. So we will do that thing. And in this case, we're going to go for Goblin Biker Grand Bash. We're going to activate the continuous spell, and we're going to use its effect. We could target 2 monsters and make one of them become the level of the other. We're going to turn them both to level 3. Now we're going to use our 2 level 3s, and we're going to make Big Gabonga. He's the biggest Gabonga. We're going to use his effect, and we're going to grab Boom Mock. And then the combo's over. We got that's all you can get off of just 1 card. But even then, this represents 2 pieces of removal plus follow-up. So we'll show, even though this is an unassuming board, during the end phase, you're going to attach something, and we're going to get the Clatter Sploder for follow-up. And then we'll see the opponent's going to do some stuff. They're going to summon exactly 1 monster, Kozaki. What we're going to do is we're going to activate Boom Mock. We can special summon this by detaching a card from our Big Gabonga, and we're going to want to detach the Goblin Bikers Gone Wild. So that'll summon this, and that'll trigger both the Gabonga and the Gone Wild. This can detach any monster on the field, so we can get the Kozaki and add it on here. And this can attach any card, so you imagine if they had a second monster, or a spell trap, or anything at all, then you're going to use this. Just for the sake of this, we're going to attach the Boom Mock. Pretend like this gets run over regardless. And boom, you suck up 2 monsters. And then we're going to go ahead and detach another monster. And there you go. You know, it's not great, but also, you know, just 1 card. In classic modern Yu-Gi-Oh fashion, which is kind of a weird phrase, but a lot of modern archetypes work this way, where you have a 1-card combo, it's not great, but in the process of doing that, you open up room for a whole bunch of other combos. You know, this gets you another normal summon of a Goblin Biker this turn. So if you had any other Goblin Biker in your hand, you could normal summon it, extend even further. If you already had like a Doug in hand, you could summon that by detaching one from Gabonga. That doesn't interrupt your combos. And while I said this gives you follow-up, it doesn't unless you detach it, actually. If you detach the Clatter Sploder, then you can summon it back by detaching one and then get another one out of the graveyard and make another Ixie. I mean, even then, just top decking another Goblin Bikers Gone Wild, I think gives us enough damage to, like, OTK. I've got another combo to show, though, so we won't get to that now, but I mean, like, just look at this. Once you've got this set up, like, Clatter Sploder summons, that gets the Goblin Biker Gone Wild, and with the Grand Bash on the field, this is, like, well over lethal. So now that you've got that, let's show the other combo, which is actually a little more explosive, but also a little more vulnerable to specific kinds of removal. So once again, we're starting with just the Goblin Bikers Gone Wild. Normal summon it, use the effect, get the Doug Charger, except this time, instead of grabbing the Grand Bash, or is that what it's called? Yeah, instead of grabbing the Grand Bash, we're gonna get the Breakout, the quick play spell. We're gonna use the Breakout, tribute off the Gone Wild, and summon the Clatter Sploder. Clatter Sploder is then going to get the Gone Wild back. We're gonna put this here. Now we got 2 level 3s. We can get Big Gabonga on here. Activate that effect. We're gonna get another Doug Charger, and we can summon the Doug Charger by detaching the Clatter Sploder from the Big Gabonga. So you summon this. Because one was detached, you can use the Big Gabonga to suck up the Goblin Bikers Gone Wild. And now you've essentially got the same board, where you got a Big Gabonga with the Goblin Bikers Gone Wild attached to it, and a way to trigger it during the opponent's turn. The big difference here is that when you do this move, you're going to get a whole bunch of follow-up, but also if they have like a Called by the Grave or a DD Crow or any way to mess with your graveyard, then they can just instantly stop this and completely shut down your plays. But assuming they don't, you can do the same thing you did, detach the Bikers, summon the Clatter Sploder, and that will trigger in order the Gone Wild, the Big Gabonga, and let's just pretend this is like another monster they had, and the Clatter Sploder, which will summon back the Gone Wild. So we get to attach 2 cards, and then when this comes out, you can trigger its effect, summon the 3rd Doug Charger from the deck, and now this is where you get the Grand Bash. So as soon as your turn starts, you know you've got 3 extra monsters on the field. You can make any rank 3 you want. You can also turn one of these into a rank 6 and make any rank 6 you want. Completely clear the field, and everything is going to have so much attack, you're just gonna go crazy. Crazy amount of follow-up, slightly more vulnerable, and just like last time, you know, there's a lot of points along that combo where if you had any other extender or even any other Goblin Biker in your hand, you could continue to play onwards. Realistically, though, if you're playing in like a real setting, what's going to happen is one or more of those plays is going to be hit by something like an Ash Blossom or an Imperm or whatever, and then you'll use your extenders to push back past that and end on this regardless. And of course, you know, if you end with any other 2 level 3s on the field, you're just making like an effect negate, you're just making an effect negate. If you can get there with Grand Bash, you can make an effect negate. You're just getting a whole bunch of effect negation in addition to all this removal and all this setup for next turn. So yeah, already just a very solid deck, a whole lot of stuff going on, a whole lot of moving parts. I could maybe sit down and come up with some more 1-card combos. There's obviously some stuff you can do just with Doug, I believe, in order to advance the game state. Yeah, because Doug could grab the Grand Breakout, and then you could tribute Doug to get Clatter Sploder. That brings back the Doug. You make Big Gabonga, you search Boom Mock, you know. Grand Entrance, of course, searches all these. If you have Terror Top, then you can get into Big Gabonga, search Doug without having to use your normal summon. There's a whole lot of potential here to do a whole bunch of different combos, and I don't even need to, like, I don't even feel the need to have to sit down to work them out, to be like, yeah, clearly this deck can do some stuff. It's just a matter of how much is it going to do, what other cards and archetypes can it synergize with, and will people realize that Doug Charger is like the best card in the deck and it'll become like an MST magnet, and then once they do that, it locks you off of all the spell traps and you feel kind of screwed, unless you happen to open them. I don't know, I feel like every combo I've seen of this deck, when it does go off, usually has the spells and traps, so maybe there's more potential, but I feel like when you only have the one search and you mostly need extenders, you're probably not going for these unless you already have like everything else you need. But I mean, that could be a potential with the way you build this deck. Overall, very excited. I look forward to maybe playing these one day. I can absolutely see why certain players, including MBT, really like this deck. It seems like a fun Ixie deck, and I like attaching things to Big Gabonga. I mean, who wouldn't? You're just running over stuff with your big bicycle. Anyway, I think that's it for now. Hopefully you have a good understanding of how the deck works. Thanks again to Cat Monarch for suggesting this, and until next time, good luck and have fun.